ॐ तव कथामृतं तप्तजीवनं कविभिरीडितं कल्मषापहं शरवणमङ्गलं श्रीमदाततं भूयानन्ति भूरियात्. Your words are like nectar, bringing life to squirt souls. They are praised by poets and remove all sin. They are auspicious to hear, wonderful and exalted. Those who spread these words throughout the world are truly giving souls. Welcome, everyone, to our class on the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. We are on the chapter The Master and M. And this is Saturday, September 22nd, 1883. You may remember from last time that there's a long conversation between Sri Ramakrishna and Ishan, which is very interesting because it's a year before another big conversation. And I never really tried to juxtapose these two conversations because it almost seems like Ishan either forgot everything that Thakur said or ignored it a year later, because he'll start doing his ritualistic worship and his Puruscharan and everything, and gets a little bit of a scolding. So it's a very interesting section that Thakur is telling. He's addressing others also, but Ishan seems to be the main person here. The conversation is taking place in the drawing room of Adhar's house. Oh, sorry, page number is 291. At Adhar's house in Kolkata, and Rakal, Adhar M, Ishan, and other devotees are there. And it says many gentlemen of the neighborhood were also present. It was afternoon. Generally, when Thakur would go to somebody's house, all of the close devotees would come if they could, and then the host would invite some local people. Some of them who were curious, some who were interested, and some who were less interested. But that seems to be the case. And if it's nobody very important, then M doesn't even give the name for that. Okay. This is page 291. A devotee. Sir, what do you think of the Navavidhan? It seems to me like a hodgepodge of everything. This Navavidhan was the name that Keshav gave to the Brahmo Samaj, that he, either we can say that it split, or that he was kind of removed and started another branch. But anyhow, there became two. There was the Shadharan Brahmo Samaj. This was just the general one. And then he gave this name, Navavidhan, which means new dispensation. I think they use that term also, technical term, new dispensation. So he's referring to Keshav's group. It's still the Brahmo Samaj. Keshav didn't change anything. He had to come up with a new name because he couldn't use the old name anymore. So we have different names. The Adi Brahmo Samaj, that was the original one, started by Devendranath Tagore. And then I guess when it split, one became Shadharan and the other became this Navavidhan. So Keshav's views underwent a change after meeting Sri Ramakrishna, but that had nothing to do with this split. The split took place because they were unhappy with Keshav. He arranged his daughter's marriage to a very wealthy family. This was the Maharaja of Kuch Bihar. And she was a few months short of what they call the marriageable age. Now, the second thing is that it gets mentioned every once in a while that he married her to someone from a different caste. Now, I don't know why the Brahmos would care about that, Shukla, But they mention that. Yeah. You can take it off for a second. I can't hear. Yeah. Now that I know. Yeah. Yeah, that I know. Yeah, she's saying that even those who convert to Christianity, they'll keep their Brahmanhood and other caste things. And yeah, so it's very deeply seated. But the Brahmins were so against all of that stuff. So it's a little unusual. Anyhow, the other thing is that they were shocked because child marriage was something they were very much against. I think the marriageable age was 16, according to the Brahmos, and she was just a few months short. London, do you know? No, anyhow, something like that. So anyhow, they gave this fancy name, Navavidhan, for some reason, to Keshav's new group. Master, some say it is a modern thing that sets me wondering. Then is the God of the Brahmo Samaj a new God? The Brahmos speak of their. See, Thakur didn't make any distinction. To him, they were all Brahmos. He knew that there were two groups. Vijay was with one and Keshav was with the other. The Brahmos speak of their cult as a Navavidhan, as a new dispensation. Well, it may be so. Who knows? There are 6 systems of philosophy, so perhaps it is like one of these. But you know where they speak, who speak of the formless God. Sorry, but you know where those who speak of the formless God make their mistake. It is where they say that God is formless only, and that those who differ with them are wrong. Now, we know that this idea of God with form carries with it a lot of baggage, and there's so many different conceptions of what it means from the old Vedic period where we have this idea of Purusha, and this whole universe is the form and body of God. And others will say, no, this God with form, we're referring to Shiva and Durga and all the deities. And for the Brahmos, it seems like the real objection to the worship of God with form was image worship, what they call idol worship. That was the real objection. Philosophically, their concept of Brahman was not simply this impersonal absolute, but a Brahman that could be prayed to. So a little bit like the personal God, but real objection was to having an idol or an image. Yeah. So Thakur wanted them to understand that these are helps and aids in spiritual life, and that they have a symbolic purpose and everything. And anyhow, he didn't want them to have such a kind of arrogant attitude toward the people who follow this image worship, that they're just worshiping clay idols and things like that in stone. Now, when Thakur talks about God with form, of course, he has a very sophisticated and subtle understanding of God with form, that just as water can form into blocks of ice through the cooling power of the devotee, that they can form and take the form, so that the form will not have that same eternal, in most cases, that eternal element to it, but will be an aid for the devotee to conceive of God with the different virtues and qualities, and even if conceive of God with the physical form for the sake of meditation and concentration and devotion. So it says that I know that God is both with and without form, and he may have many more aspects. It is possible for him to be everything. Now he's going to continue. That was a kind of a little aside. One devotee asked this question. He didn't go on too long. Now he goes back to Ishan. To Ishan, the Chit Shakti, Mahamaya, has become the 24 cosmic principles. Okay, in one sentence, we have so many different elements here. We've talked about this Chit Shakti, that if we're talking about the power of Brahman, there are different types of powers, but all of them will have to fall under this Chit Shakti. There's a power to create the universe and with uphold the universe and withdraw the universe. It's all through some type of concept of cosmic mind. There's a power of consciousness itself to not simply remain what it is, but to manifest itself as this visible universe somehow, or to enter into everything. All of this is that power, because it has to be a Chit Shakti. There's no material elements hanging around that the Brahman will create a universe out of. This is the idea that everything comes from Brahman itself. And if Brahman is consciousness, then the power has to be a power of consciousness. So Chit Shakti, now he's identifying Thakur Chit Shakti with Mahamaya. So we've talked about this. What is the distinction between Mahamaya and Maya and Avidya, all of these different things? This Mahamaya, generally, this is what Thakur means by the personal God, who is looked upon as the Divine Mother, who has this power of creation. Maya is another very interesting thing. When we studied the Upanishads, we saw this. This term Maya, it comes very early in the Vedic tradition. Then it means a type of magic. And then we don't find it in the Upanishads at all. I think until Shvetashvatara Upanishad, there's some mention of Maya, which is a little bit later. And then it becomes such a dominant idea. So it goes from some magical power to some power of delusion. So this Mahamaya will create the universe, but also represent a little bit of veiling power, so that we fail to understand our real nature, or if we want to look at it from the other side, Brahman fails to understand. Brahman has become everything, and Brahman is now dwelling within all beings. And then somehow it's a Brahman who has fallen under delusion, but we generally don't think in those terms. Brahman falling into delusion becomes a jiva, so it's the jiva who's subject to avidya and has to realize its oneness. So this Mahamaya will be really Ishvara, Saguna Brahman, the personal God, with this idea of motherhood added to it. And for Thakur, we have that leeway. This is our own contribution to this idea of the personal God, that we like to think of God by focusing on the qualities of the mother. That means there's perfect selfless love, there's compassion, sweetness, all of that. There's no special truth to God as mother as opposed to God as father. These are just personal preference, how we like to look upon God. God doesn't have any physical organs that we could say is either male or female. And so a lot of this is the subjective side that gets added to it. But there's an objective side to it also. If Brahman alone is the ultimate reality, then there has to be some objective truth to this power that's connected with the Brahman, that will be a Chit Shakti, which will allow this Brahman to somehow be responsible for this universe. Somehow. Whether it's a projection, whether it's a false appearance, whether a manifestation, however we understand, whether it's a dream, there has to be something which allows this Brahman to create or project. Somehow it allows us to explain how this universe comes when we start out with it simply Brahman alone exists. And Brahman is pure consciousness. Brahman is inactive. Brahman is inactive. How is Brahman responsible for the universe, for creation? So we have to bring in some type of secondary thing. We bring in Maya. We say Mahamaya. So this will be personifying this Maya as the Divine Mother, which is really none other than our Ishvara, this God the Creator, with a little bit of Bhagavan, a little bit of the personal God added to it, because we bring in the motherhood aspect. So this, he says, this Chit Shakti Mahamaya has become the 24 cosmic principles. Now we're really going into this transition. We have two ways of looking at it. One, if we're using this snake and rope, we never have to account for how the rope comes to appear to be the snake. It's just ignorance. There's no transition. There's no evolution that takes place to explain. If we go to the 24 cosmic principles, we're going back to evolution, that it's some type of actual manifestation. Actual, it's not just a misreading of something, because they combine. Huh? We start with this Mahat, and we go to Ankara. We have the whole list of things. It combines from this cosmic mind. They come down to the subtle elements, to the physical elements, and then the evolution of this natural world as we see it. So this means we're bringing this concept of Prakriti also into this. So we have Maya, we have Shakti, we have Prakriti. These are all the correlative categories that go along with the Brahman or Ishvara or Purusha, however we look at it. The male side, the female side, different ways of looking at it. Thakur is combining all of them and showing that there's a way to look at it with some type of harmony. We don't simply have to say Mahamaya, that this Brahman there's no real change, there's no real creation, it's just a pure illusion, like a dream. In a dream, we don't explain the existence of the chair. If somebody says, well, who made that chair in the dream? Oh, nobody made it. It's just a projection of mind. And what is it really made of? What's inside the cushion? Is it wool or is it cotton? Suppose you have a dream and you dream there's a chair. Somebody says, well, what was inside of the chair? We said it was a red chair. It was a nice cushion. They said, what was inside of it? I didn't dream that part. How can I say? Huh? There's a very interesting conversation one time that one devotee had a vision of Krishna. And he said to Sri Krishna, why is it that your earrings aren't moving, aren't jangling? And Sri Krishna said, if you make them move, then they'll move. Something like that. Huh? So this brings in all these elements, and it gives a positive way of understanding creation, that it's not unreal like a dream, but it is this power that belongs to Brahman that is inexplicable. This is also the Maya part. Definition of Maya is that which makes the seemingly impossible possible.
In Sankhya idea,
Yeah.
the Prakriti is not formed from Mahamaya. It is automatically from the beginning.
This is the main difference, that the relationship between Purusha and Prakriti is one of just closeness, proximity. That they're separate, but there is a dependence between them. There is a dependence. It's not absolutely separate and parallel universes. We can't have Prakriti without Purusha. Yeah, so they go hand in hand. But you're right. We don't have to trace back Prakriti to Purusha or this universe back to Maya. That'll be the one distinction. So they won't say that this Purusha has become this whole universe. They won't explain it that way. The Prakriti has evolved and then it goes back. So evolution takes place, and then reverse process takes place. One day, as I was meditating, my mind wandered away to Roshik's house. Well, I'll talk about him. He is a scavenger. I said to my mind, stay there, you rogue. The Divine Mother revealed to me that the men and women in this house were mere masks. Inside them was the same divine power, Kundalini, that rises up through the 6 spiritual centers of the body. So within everyone, now, if, and this is my recommendation, if we're really not too committed to understanding how Brahman becomes this whole universe, we can at least try to see how Brahman is dwelling within all the beings as the real self. Or, if not as the real self, then at least as the Antaryaman, as that ray of consciousness, how we can understand how the one sun is reflected in all the different containers without understanding where the containers came from. The containers filled with water. Huh? If somebody says, well, the sun is manifesting itself as those containers, well, they don't confuse me. Huh? But we can understand this, that within each and every being, that light that we see shining out of the eyes of everyone is the light of God. We can all understand that. It's a simple thing. We have to remind ourselves The same consciousness within me is within everyone, and it has a divine source. Now, I want to get to this Thakur called him Roshke. His name was Roshik, and he was not simply some. They use the term scavenger, huh? Yeah, it's a funny term, but anyhow, it means someone who cleans latrines. Huh? And before there was real plumbing and everything, they would go around to especially inside of a house. There would be a little back entrance. I stayed in a house like that when I lived in Kolkata. Yeah,
Okay.
there's a little back door that the scavengers could go in and clean it out. I had a very interesting experience also. I stayed in a place called Okla. You know that in Delhi? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Is it really? Yeah. And it was like a little old Pakistani community, the old Muslim. I made friends with someone from Thailand. My first trip to India. There's a Muslim from Thailand who was studying in New Delhi at the university, and so I went and I stayed with him, and it was just like you were back in the 19th century or something like that, and they had that arrangement that we'll get to also this idea of how they carry water in this skin, huh? But the same thing with the scavenger would come, and without even entering, there would be a little place that you pull something out, you wash out. There's be no plumbing, and then you push it back in. So this is what they did. Now this isn't just some simple outcast. This is a great devotee we're talking about. That Thakur loved very much. We have to remember that how he had this special relationship. Anyhow, I want to read a little bit. This is from the Sharada Mutt, the story of Roshik Bhita. Roshik Bhita, this is the place where he lived. And why Sharada Mutt? Because they purchased that house, and where he had his vision and everything there. And now it's a kind of computer center, teaching center for girls. Yeah. I went there with Swami Sarvadevanji one time, and it's a very nice place. Okay, so this is from that article. Make sure I have it from the beginning. This is Swami Vishuddhananda, recalled. I heard from Ramlal, that's Ramakrishna's nephew, about the master's unconditional grace bestowed on Roshik. That's hard, Roshik. He was the sweeper, scavenger sweeper. They use all these, these funny terms for it. He was the sweeper of the Dakshineshwar temple garden. Now, where they have latrines there, I don't know, because Thakur never used them. He just went to the pine grove. But anyhow, it must have been for all the workers. There must have been some place there. Yeah, yeah, I'll get to that. Every day he saw the master from a distance and observed that many people visited him. Roshik pondered, I am so near to the master, still I cannot go to his room and touch his feet. They were outcasts. The people wouldn't go near them. In some communities, if your shadow touched their shadow, you had to go bathe. It was really tremendous negative feelings towards these people at that time. So he said, what sin have I committed? The master is saving so many souls, good and bad. How unfortunate I am. I see him from a distance, but cannot go near him. Thus, a storm was raging in his mind over a period of a few years. He had no peace. One day, a golden opportunity came. The master went to the pine grove to answer the call of nature, and Brother Ramlal was waiting near the Panchavati. Roshik hid himself behind a tree and thought, I don't care what will happen. I can't bear it anymore. When the master was returning, Roshik prostrated himself on the path near the Nahabat, grabbed his feet, and cried out, Father, Baba, what will happen to me? This unexpected approach startled the master, and he went into samadhi, which lasted for some time. Roshik washed the master's feet with his tears. So intense was the agony of his heart. Gradually, the master returned to the normal state, touched Roshik's head, and said, You have achieved everything. Can you imagine? Oh, this didn't print out very well. Another memoir from Kedarnath. The Roshik Hadi of Dakshineshwar village belonged to the sweeper caste. I saw the master talk to Roshik, standing in his courtyard as if they were friends. Seeing Roshik a little tipsy, the master said with a smile, I understand your condition. Don't drink too much. Roshik fell at the master's feet and said, Father, I cannot afford to drink. Who will give me money to buy alcohol? Luckily, Notabar Panja's mother died, so I got some extra money for doing some cleaning in that house. But whose mothers are going to die every day, Father? In his famous lecture, My Master in America, Swami Vivekananda said, my master once sought permission to clean a sweeper's house. Now, we don't really hear that he sought permission. The way we hear it mostly is that in dead of night he would go out, and without anybody knowing, he would go in and clean out the house. Obviously, it's the same Roshik, that he would go there. And does it say? And with his hair was very long in those days. He would use his own hair to clean out the latrine. This was to get rid of this pride of caste. He used to explain it that way.
It's a little bit difficult to understand.
Yeah,
Thakur
yeah.
did not have a latrine. They had to go
Yes.
to Pango, and the sweeper had the poorest.
I would imagine that Thakur that he probably preferred to just go out in the pine grove.
Yeah, that was it.
Yeah, otherwise sharing with everybody else. And yeah, otherwise it is strange why they didn't build one for him or something like that. And he must, from a village, he was probably used to that. Yeah, I think that was probably he wouldn't like to do it. Yeah. My master once sought permission to clean a sweeper's house. The sweeper, of course, refused. So late at night, when all were asleep, Thakur used to go to his house. He had long hair, and with his hair he would wipe the place and said, allow me to feel that I am lower than the sweeper, so that the pride of belonging to a higher caste is completely removed. In doing so, not only did he erase his own pride, but also established in the modern skeptic minds that such eradication is truly possible. This is another reminiscence. Oh, this must be Ramlal, whose uncle, meaning Sri Ramakrishna, was resting one afternoon in his room. He got up and then came out to the veranda. Pointing to Roshik, the temple sweeper, he said to me, Roshik is not an ordinary mortal, but a denizen of heaven in human form. Another day, the master went to the pine grove, while I went behind him carrying the water spout and towel for his use. Roshik was sweeping around the Panchabati grove in the temple garden. When uncle was returning to his room, Roshik prostrated at his feet. Smiling, the master inquired about his welfare. Roshik got up and said that he could not get over the misfortune of his lowly birth, which condemned him to the despicable life of a sweeper. See, some people think, oh, who is this Thakur? People, impure people, they touched his feet, he would yell and scream. It had nothing to do with caste. We have to understand that. Roshik got up and said he could not get over the misfortune of his lowly birth, which condemned him to the despicable life of a sweeper. Uncle replied that he should not bemoan his social status, for he was, after all, born a human being, the highest of God's creation. The Supreme Spirit dwelled in him also. The master reminded him of his good fortune to have been entrusted with the sacred task of sweeping the temple courtyard and temple steps, sanctified by the dust of the feet of thousands of devotees who came to worship at the shrines. With tearful eyes, Roshik asked, Father, shall I be saved? With a gracious smile, the master asked him to raise a tulsi grove in a corner of his courtyard and chant the Lord's name there. That tulsi grove is now the main room in this computer center, and the little shrine is there to that. Now we get to the last days. Oh, something. What is our? Okay, this didn't print out well. I can't read all of it, but anyhow, Ramlal's talking to Roshik's wife. What has happened? How is Roshik? She replied that her husband was very ill. Her sons had called in the doctor, but he refused to take any medicine. He was a devout Vaishnava. He immediately went to the Radhakanta temple, collected some sanctified water and some tulsi leaves, and gave them to Roshik's wife. Since Ramlal did not see her again, Ramlal must have done that, he went to their hut a few days later. Roshik's wife and sons cried and said that he had passed away. Then they narrated the last days of Roshik. The sanctified water of the Radhakanta temple seemed to have a stimulating effect on Roshik. He felt better. His fever abated, and he spent his waking hours in chanting the Lord's name and in fervent prayer. One day, when they returned home after their work at about midday, he insisted on their taking their meal at once. After they had complied to his wish, he asked them to take him out to the Tulsi Grove. It was hot outside. They reluctantly obeyed him. He lay on a mat with his rosary in his hand and asked them to chant God's name. After half an hour, his face brightened up. There was an ardent look in his eyes and a smile on his lips. He exclaimed, "Oh, thou hast come at long last." How unsurpassingly beautiful, glorious, resplendent. He then closed his eyes, and it seemed to them that a halo played around his radiant, peaceful face as he fell into eternal sleep. Of course, we understand Thakur himself came. Roshik was not a prominent figure in Sri Ramakrishna's divine drama. Although the audience did not see him on the stage, he had the responsibility of keeping the stage, the temple garden of Dakshineswar, clean. He demonstrated in his life that work is worship and each is great in his own place. This is a very nice thing. If you go to the website and just type in Ramakrishna and Roshik, and then go to this Shardamat website, you can read all about that. So
Did you get a mantra from Ramakrishna?
Thakur didn't give mantra. Sometimes he would write something. We don't. This is as much as we know. He gave him his grace. Yeah. He told him that you have nothing to worry about. That you're liberated. You're free and everything. Yeah. So he didn't need any mantra or anything like that. He was a Vaishnava. That meant that he would have. They don't have the same mantra tradition where it's secret and takes initiation. The Hare Krishna mantra, everybody knows it and everyone can do it. The Goswami tradition, there'll be some initiation there, but just for ordinary people. They can just be, so with his rosary, he can just be doing that. And, anyhow, that's as much as we know. Anybody else know anything else? Anyhow, it's a nice story. Roshik.
I mean, when did in Europe and all the plum toilets and all come?
I don't know.
They must have had the same kind of latrines.
Yeah,
we
of
had
course.
at one time.
Of course.
Yeah, and at that time.
When I visited, when I was in Paris, this is 1971. I stayed in. We met some people and stayed in their apartment there. And the bathroom was not even inside; it was outside, a shared one, and it was a latrine. It was just like that.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
Actually, the Marseille Palace.
Yeah.
It did not have any latrine.
Yeah.
And all the guests and all aristocrats used to go to the staircase and did the job.
Oh boy. Okay, we've got a little bit off track here now. So this goes back. One day I was meditating. My mind wandered away to Roshke's house. He is a scavenger. See, if we don't know the whole story, we miss all of that. What a sweet relationship he had, how he loved him and how it really gave him liberation. I said to my mind, "Stay there, you rogue." The divine mother revealed to me that the men and women in this house were mere masks. Inside them was the same divine power, Kundalini, that rises up to the 6 spiritual centers of the body. So Thakur, depending on his mood, had these 2 visions, we can say, of this world. One, he saw everything as consciousness, the way all artificial fruit will all be made of wax, or all jewelry made of gold. This is one thing. Everything chidghana. The other thing is he saw that divine presence dwelling within all living beings. That doesn't require any of this philosophical idea of this physical universe. We can accept it just as a physical universe and still understand that the awareness within has that divine source. The divine presence is there. So they weren't two conflicting things, but I think just depending on his mood, that sometimes he would focus. If he looked at a person, he wouldn't so much see that, I see that the eyes and the nose and the ears are all nothing but consciousness. He would see that God dwelling within. That seemed to be the tendency of his mind that way. Otherwise, sometimes you say, I see everything, this whole universe. That's reserved for the mystics. How we understand that is a very difficult thing to really understand. How this is nothing but consciousness that we're seeing. It's very hard. Inside them was the same divine power, Kundalini, that rises up through the 6 spiritual centers of the body. Is the primal energy, this Shakti, Adi Shakti, man or woman? Now, this is the point that I was making before, that these are subjective things, man or woman. Once at Kamarpukur, I saw the worship of Kali in the house of the Lahas. The Lahas were the wealthy family in Kamarpukur, and Thakur was very fond of them. They loved him. There were 4 daughters, and they all treated him like a young baby brother somehow, and he spent a lot of time with them. They were the ones who provided the jewelry at the time of the wedding for Sharada Devi and Holy Mother, that had to be returned to them afterwards. So I saw the worship of Kali in the house of the Lahas. They put a sacred thread on the image of the Divine Mother. Sacred thread will only be put on a male image. This was the tradition at that time. One man asked, why have they put the sacred thread on the mother's person? The master of the house said, brother, I see that you have rightly understood the mother, but I do not yet know whether the Divine Mother is male or female. Yeah. What is it? Kokono Purusho, Kokono Prakati, Kokono Shunnarupa. There's a beautiful song by Kamalakanta to the Divine Mother. Sometimes I see you as Purusha, male. Sometimes I see you as female. Sometimes I see you as nothing but the void. And then he says to think about these things, and yes, throws my mind into confusion. My whole life I've been contemplating the real nature of the Divine Mother, and still I know nothing about her real nature. Mahamaya. The beautiful songs. There's one of the distinctive features of all of these songs to Shakti song, to the Divine Mother. This idea that how can a child understand everything about the Divine Mother beyond our ability, and we don't care to understand everything. Enough we know we have a mother, and we love that mother, she loves us. Enough. Now, this is something that I don't know anything about. It is said that Mahamaya swallowed Shiva. When the 6 centers in her were awakened, Shiva came out through her thigh. Then Shiva created the Tantra philosophy. Is this from Chandi? Well, it must be from one of the Puranas, some story. I don't know what the real significance is, but those who worship Shiva, they'll give him special emphasis. Those who worship Shakti, they'll give special emphasis to Mahamaya. So Kali will be standing on the chest of Shiva, the Kali temple. Take refuge in the Chit Shakti, the Mahamaya. So now, and this is the same thing that we get in the Gita verse, Daivahiyesha Gunamayi, that those cross beyond this Maya who take refuge in this Mahamaya, who take refuge in me, but then Sri Krishna, now he's identified with that. So not only is this some principle of power and energy associated with pure consciousness, but now this personal God comes in. The Divine Mother who answers our prayers, we take refuge in her, we surrender everything to her will. that she's a real operator of the machine. So these ideas, they keep evolving, and going deeper and sweeter. This sweetness comes in with this idea of the Divine Mother. So take refuge in the Chit Shakti, the Mahamaya. So that means, what does it mean? That we become like the kitten. Wherever Mother places us, we're happy. That Mother is doing everything for me. I put myself in her hands. I practice this Sharanagati. I practice contentment. I try to remember the Mother at all times. Whatever happens, I take as her will. There's all the ways of taking refuge in Mahamaya. Ishan, please bestow your grace on me. This Ishan was a good person. He was a very good person. He had this in the back of his head. He wanted to do this ritualistic thing, this Buddhist and everything. And he had a reputation and for solving people's problems, arbitration and things like that. He did a lot of things like that. But he was a very good person. Master, say to God with a guile, and Thakur loved him, of course. Say to God with a guileless heart, O God, reveal thyself to me, and weep. Pray to God. O God, keep my mind away from lust and gold, and dive deep. Can a man get pearls by floating or swimming on the surface? He must dive deep. Now, we hear about this all of the time. Doob, doob, doob. Doob, doob, doob. Rup Shagare, Amarmon. What does it mean to dive deep? Arya? Kumar? We first of all, of course, it means going inward, going to the depths of the mind, going beneath the surface level. If we use this analogy of the ocean of consciousness, then if we're floating on the surface, that means we're with this active mind. The surface, the waves of the mind, this is that active mind. We go a little deeper and we go to the depths of the mind. We go even deeper to that and we get to that source and all of the gems lying at the bottom. So it means going deep within and deep within the mind, deep within the heart, going into this level of feeling and not thinking. See, when we go beyond this cursive mind, this is a mind that's analyzing and thinking, and we don't simply go to a blank state. We go to some feeling state. We have this conception, partly from our Yoga Sutra verse, this Chitta Vritti Nirodha. We have some conception that the samadhi means mind is blank. But samadhi really means intense concentration on a single thing. And that concentration will have to make the mind disappear, but the feeling will be there. It won't be the consciousness that there's no consciousness or no awareness. But it's not of a functioning mind the way our mind normally functions. This is why Thakur always says, when anybody ever says that God can't be realized through the mind, he corrects them. He says, no, God is realized through this pure mind, because this pure mind is one with the Atman, the real self. Pure mind and pure buddhi, one. So we enter into that level of feeling and enter of love, that Vrindavan of the heart, that song, Doob Doob Doob. It talks about finding that place of the divine sport, the divine lila deep within. So it can even be where we forget about this world and we go back into this lila world, this divine play. Thakur's play in Dakshineshwar, Krishna's play in Vrindavan, however we understand it, and get lost in that and dive deep into that. So we forget everything else. And the heart gets filled with joy and with love. So these are all different ways of doing it. The Jnani will also have his own way of diving deep. This feeling, that pure awareness that I'm not this body, I'm not this mind, I'm something separate. That'll also be diving deep. But for the devotee, it'll be entering into this unlocking the heart, expanding the heart, not just shutting off the mind. This is a kind of a dry thing, but expanding the heart that way. So, and dive deep. Can a man get pearls by floating or swimming on the surface? He must dive deep. One must get instruction from a guru. Now he's getting it. This is he's getting so many beautiful instructions. Huh?
Is that realm called the superconscious mind?
Everyone will have it. All if we're from a devotional tradition, we're talking about merging in God itself, or Himself, or herself. Superconscious. This means that we're somehow functioning without the mind and without the senses. That we've reached a different level. Super consciousness, generally we associate with samadhi, something like that. But this diving deep, uh, we really can feel that we're lying on the lap of Mother. Huh? There's so many different ways of understanding it. We don't have to come up with any technical terms or interpretation of it. Huh? And going back to the source, but feeling that we've 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 reached that ultimate destination, and we take refuge there, and it's a place of safety and security, peace and contentment, freedom to reach that, and it's within us. That's the whole point. Dive deep. It doesn't mean outside of it. It doesn't even mean through any type of analysis. It means deep within the heart, going beyond the mind into the heart center. The heart center is deeper than the mind. This mind hides things from us. We think it helps explain things, but it actually confuses us. So we have to go beyond that into that heart center. So this is my understanding of this, diving deep. Once a man was looking for a stone image of Shiva. Someone said to him, "Go to a certain river. There you will find a tree. Near it is a whirlpool. Dive into the water there, and you will find the image of Shiva." So I say that one must get instruction from a teacher. So yes, we don't know where to dive. Huh? We know we can say dive within, deep within, but how to do it. This is what we get from the guru and from initiation and everything. We get instruction on how to deepen our meditation and our concentration and our feeling of love. Ishan, that is true, sir. Master, it is Satchidananda that comes to us in the form of the Guru. Now, don't get confused all these different terms. What about Mahamaya? Mahamaya, Satchidananda, there's no difference. It's a slight different uh, connotation. You know, this connotation denotation distinction. Denoting the same object. Connotation slightly different. Like we take a person, someone says, "Oh, that's my mother," and somebody says, "Oh, that's my coworker at work," denoting the same person, but connotation is so different, but the same. So the same thing. Satchidananda. This simply emphasizes the existence, knowledge, bliss aspect, not so much this Shakti aspect or anything, but it's the same thing. It is Satchidananda that comes to us in the form of the Guru. If a man is initiated by a human Guru, he will not achieve anything if he regards his Guru as a mere man. Thakur very often says Satchidananda alone is the Guru. This doesn't mean that the Guru doesn't have a physical body or anything like that. Guru is also a person. But our attitude should be a little different. We should feel that it's through God's grace the Guru has come to us. This Guru represents a special type of manifestation of the divine. Just as we look upon the avatars, a special manifestation. The Guru is also out of love and out of respect, but at the same time, we can feel that there's some objective truth to it, that they are specially endowed with some Shakti, some power, which allows them to be real gurus, not just ordinary people. We have this Kulu Guru system and everything, that they're just, they were born in a family of gurus, and not like that. This is those who have some special commission, as Thakur used to say. In our order, to become president of the order is not a small thing. That we really feel that uh, it's not just that this is the embodiment of Satchidananda, it's the embodiment of Thakur himself. That he is dwelling within in gurus of our order, and that they're the real power that is giving the initiation and the real source of everything. So we don't look upon the guru as an ordinary person that way. The special reverence to the guru is the embodiment of that power, that's Sri Ramakrishna dwelling within them in a special way to transmit this power to others. The guru should be regarded as the direct manifestation of God. Only then can the disciple have faith in the mantra given by the guru. Once a man has faith, he achieves all. The Shudra, Ekalavya, learned archery in the forest before a clay image of Drona. This is a story from Mahabharata, that he went to Drona and requested initiation. It was refused. But he said, no, I've accepted him in my heart, at least as a guru. So he made a clay image, and did everything for that image as if it's for. So he looked upon him as his guru. So Ekalavya learned archery in the forest before a clay image of Drona. He worshipped the image as the living Drona. That by itself enabled him to attain mastery in archery. Now he's telling this Ishan, don't mix intimately with the Brahmin Pandits, because he used to do that. Somehow he had some special connection with the Brahmin community. I don't understand all of these things, but this caste system, there'll be some who will be kind of caste leaders. It's like the old, what is it called, the panchayat system or something, that will make decisions if it comes up that somebody uh, dined with somebody from a different caste. Should they be fined a certain amount of money? Should they be excommunicated for a month? Something like that. So apparently he was involved with these types of things a little bit also, this Ishan. Don't mix intimately with Brahmin Pandits. Their only concern is to earn money. I've seen Brahmin priests reciting the Chandi while performing Swasthyayana. It is hard to tell whether they are reading the sacred book or something else. They turn half the pages without reading them. All laugh. Yeah, these in the old days at least, the Brahmins had no choice. This is how they earned their money. They could have a little plot of land and to grow some rice and vegetables and things, but it would have looked very bad if they started a business and became wealthy people and everything. So they were poor. Every old story that we hear about in the scriptures was there was once a poor Brahmin family in a small village somewhere. They all start out like that. Yeah, so they were meant to be poor. Swami Swananji used to say that this was the grandeur of the Brahmins. This is why they had so much respect, because they led very simple lives of not poverty the way we understand it, where they're living on the street or anything like that, but very simple lives with a lot of restrictions. The caste. This interesting thing about the caste. We may think the upper caste people they can do whatever they want. It was the opposite. The higher they are, the more restrictions they are with regard to food and vegetarianism and things like that, and behavior and jobs that they can have. All that. A nail knife suffices to kill oneself. One needs sword and shield to kill others. That is the purpose of the Shastras. This is something that we hear different occasions. Holy Mother used to say it also. This means that for us to make progress in spiritual life, we don't have to be great scholars. I just started reading. I read it once before, but Swami Bhuteshanandaji's Kotamrita Prashango, his commentary on the gospel, and the whole introduction is about Thakur's idea of Naradiya Bhakti, and this idea that Thakur mentions over and over again, the limited value of studying scriptures. Limited value. He says that we study too much, it'll do more to confuse us than to clarify things. And what we really need is to find, because his ultimate point will be that this gospel of Sri Ramakrishna presents everything so simply, we don't need anything else. That coming from the lips of someone who realized all of these things, who was very consistent in his presentation of things, and yet very liberal and present things in so many different ways, that this is all we need. Now, if somebody wants to be a guru and have to teach others, then he'll have to have some knowledge of the scriptures, Shrotriya, know about Shruti and all of these things. But otherwise, yes, for God realization, it's not necessary. There's not a single thing in the Upanishads or Gita or anything else that we don't get in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. Not a single thing. If we study Upanishads and Gita, there's great joy in that also. And not that these should be eliminated, but they're not necessary to read all different commentaries and all the different theories, all the different schools of Vedanta, all the different schools of Indian philosophy. It's very confusing. We really don't need that. We want something that will open up the heart center and give us some clarity about everything and give us some conviction. Tucker will talk about this. We may not get to it today, but okay, let's see. One doesn't really need to study the different scriptures. If one has no discrimination, one doesn't achieve anything through mere scholarship, even though one studies all the 6 systems of philosophy. Call on God, crying to him secretly in solitude. He will give all that you need. He goes right to the essence of everything. That otherwise we get lost and there's an intellectualism. And what is this doctrine and that doctrine? Drishti Srishtivada or Srishti Drishtivada. Who cares? Huh? These are all, I read these things sometimes and I think, oh my God, what are these people thinking? I've mentioned before, I had a philosophy professor, and somebody asked him why there's so many different theories and so many philosophies and everything in the Indian tradition. And he said they were all monks. They had a lot of time on their hands. What else would they do? Sri Ramakrishna had heard that Ishan was building a house on the bank of the Ganges for the practice of spiritual discipline. He asked Ishan eagerly, because Thakur always said that. He said, go into solitude whenever you can. If you can build a little hut someplace that you can go alone, he recommended that. So he was very happy. He asked Ishan eagerly, has the house been built? Let me tell you that the less people know of your spiritual life, the better it will be for you. Now remember this, because we find Ishan doing all of this right on the steps of the Kali temple. Another reason I think that he got a scolding. Thakur was saying, don't let people know about this. The less they know, the better. And he's doing it right out in the open. Devotees endowed with sattva meditate in a secluded corner or in a forest or withdraw into the mind. Another one of his favorite statements of Thakur, that this kone bone mone. Yeah, you can meditate kone bone mone. Kone in the corner of a room. That means if we don't have a place that we can go to that's completely secluded, then we find a little place where people won't bother us. And otherwise, we can go out into the forest. But meditation, no matter what, takes place deep within the mind and within the heart. Mone, koni boni mone. Sometimes they meditate inside the mosquito net. Okay, let's stop here. We'll get to, and now this will continue. It's a beautiful, beautiful section. This chapter is the Master in M, but really so much of it is with Ishan. This will go on and on. So we'll stop here. This is on page 292. Om Niranjanam Nityamanandurupam Bhaktanukam Bhatudha Vai Ishavataram Purameshamidhyam Tam Ramakrishnam Shirasanam We bow our heads before Sri Ramakrishna, who is stainless, of infinite nature, whose heart melts in sympathy for his devotees, who is an embodiment of the divine and the Supreme Lord, and ever worthy of our worship. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.